Buenos días, amigos and amigas. ¿Cómo está? It is a beautiful day in the neighborhood. It's a beautiful day. I think it's a beautiful all over Texas. I haven't heard any news from any place where people are having parts of storms, but I'm sure that they are. And I begin to understand why people tell me don't talk about where you live, because it doesn't matter where you live. They call me Pollyanna, and the reason they call me Pollyanna is because I think that everything is the best in the world, and it is. And I find myself really understanding what my mother meant when she said we did not have any money, but we were never poor. Because as I look at the news, and there's no need for me to allude to the people about whom I'm speaking, because I've said the name so many times. But the thing is, when you see what's going on, he's not the only person. You look at the Republican Party, and I remember before I began to vote, I really thought that you had to be rich in order to be a Republican. But one of the things I liked about the Republicans is that they always seem to be decent people. Now you look at, they talk about the former president, but it isn't just the former president. I can't say it's all the Republicans, but you kind of think there must be something that shadows over them that makes them, using the phrase that the kids use, some think they're all that and a bucket of chips. And it's then that I remember and call to mind what my mother said. We did not have any money, but we were never poor. And I begin to understand that being rich means you got a lot of stuff under the bed, everywhere you go, you got stuff. And really, being rich means you're not going to get hungry. And I have never, ever in my entire life been hungry. I look at some of the kids now, and they say, I'm hungry. And then they'll refuse to eat what's on the table. And again, I recall one of the things that Mama, Papa, somebody in my family said. If you are really hungry, you will eat anything at all. And the phrase was, hunger makes a monkey eat red pepper. And I don't understand. I won't say I don't understand, because I've never been hungry. The only thing I have ever refused to eat or not wanted to eat, because I wasn't hungry at the time, so I don't really know whether I would have eaten it or not, was butter beans. And I was asking somebody the other day, do they still sell butter beans? Butter beans they're dried green beans, and they're big, and maybe about 4 of them over some rice would fill you up. I don't know, because I haven't eaten it. But I look at all of it, and I look at all of the things, and I was thinking, as I looked at the ads on television now about Christmas, I'm wondering, well, why is it that all of the stuff is on about Christmas because Christmas isn't until the 25th. And um, and the stories, I don't hear any of the stories about what Christmas is. Mass one the it was the first Sunday of Advent, and that is the coming of Christmas. And but within my family, I wonder, when we never did any of the decorating and what have you. Now, as an older person, I've begun to think maybe it wasn't because we were doing it the right way. It was because we were doing it a way that would fit into what we needed. And I begin to wonder about needs versus wants. And I'll get to that in a little bit. But we never, ever decorated our Christmas tree when I was a kid until Christmas Eve. When I was married, we didn't decorate our Christmas tree, and we would go to the Eastern Market. And of course, if you waited and it was till it was time for all of the farmers to go home, and all of what was left over, they would leave in a pile for somebody to come along. And there was one man who knew that my husband and I came in late. We would come until it was closing time. And rather than discard the stuff randomly, he would put it in a neat little pile and we would take it home. And I can remember taking some of it to church and taking some of it to some of my neighbors because it was all good. It was all clean, but it was perishable because it had reached its maturity. And of course, unless you had a big storage place, a big freezer, it was going to rot. So I would, as I said, I divided with neighbors and what have you. And I remember when I was teaching, a lot of the teachers and a lot of the students thought I had everything, which I did, because I did not mind, you call it begging, but I did not mind asking for stuff. And I would start most of it with, since you're going to throw that away, I have a couple of bags here. Could I put it in my bag and take it? Of course. Oh, you're happy for you. And they were really happy for me to have it. And I look now at people who don't pick up pennies. They don't pick up nickels. And why? Because I guess it's not there where they would get. It's not cool. It makes you look stupid. I don't know how I make, but I do it in the chair. Now I go along and I see the places, and people, it's not normally where people are just living, but I notice where workmen are. And usually after lunchtime you go through and there are lots of coins. Not, well, lots, like maybe 5, 6 coins on the floor, on the ground. And I spot them from a distance because there's a reflection of light on them. And I find myself backing up a little bit. And now I approach a little slower. And I'm amazed at the number of coins that are on the ground that people don't pick up. And I guess it's because there isn't many things you can buy for a penny or a dime even. But just as big oaks out of little acorns grow, dollars out of pennies and nickels and dimes and quarters grow. And if you put it in a jar and wait until you get it all piled up, surprisingly, you will have quite a bit. And of course, by the same token, if you take the loose change in your purse and let it pile until you have enough to buy something with which to buy something. Or if you save enough, you'll have enough to buy several somethings, or you'll have enough to give to your grandchildren. When, for instance, I don't know if you've noticed, there are no dollar stores anymore. They're $1.25 stores, which tells you something right there. So that's an investment. Teach your kids to save, to pick these up and drop them in jars, and just drop them. And I think the next time I'll bring you my jar and let you see my jar, where I picked these up in the street. And there have been no workmen in my neighborhood where I pick up a few, but this is just stuff that maybe the kids or somebody has inadvertently dropped by when they were taking something out of their pockets. And it's, again, I think you've got the idea about which I'm trying to tell you, and that is that you can save to buy practically anything that you want. And I know that I'm stretching the thing that my mom said about not being poor. But really, honestly and truthfully, when you make that definition about what poor is, if you have, by any chance, lost electricity or gas in the last couple of weeks, during that time when the temperatures fell, you know what it means to go to bed cold. And if you don't have extra blankets, that's kind of miserable, really kind of miserable. I can't begin to fathom what it would be like to be hungry, because I have never, ever been hungry. And I remember giving one of the small assignments in my class when you would take a sheet of paper and fold it, and on one side you would write needs, on the other side you would write wants, and on the needs side even poor people, if you have not gotten cramped into Wall Street telling you what you need, because that's another thing. if somebody has to tell you what you need, think about it. Do you need it? If you happen to be a late sleeper and you open your eyes at maybe 9:30, 10 o'clock, the last few days have been absolutely heavenly. The weather, hadn't been outside at the time, but it was so beautiful, the light streaming in your windows. And at that time, you didn't need any electricity because God had given you another day. I would wake up late and maybe coffee had been made. And I would have coffee. I would have toast. I might have an egg. Or I might have some fruit. But all of the things that filled any corner that constituted a need. And I have been very fortunate during my time that I don't want a lot. And I think the reason I don't want a lot is because I don't have to get myself into a corner and look around at what other people have. And because on the telly, it tells you all of the things that you need that you already have, of course. But this is what you want. You've got to have the newest shoes in town. You've got to have the newest coat. You've got to have the coolest hairdo. You've got to have the most wonderful teeth. Can you imagine? Now, this is one of the things I will not give them a hard time about. Teeth are very important because that has to do with keeping your quality of health up. Honestly and truthfully, it does. Because you have to be able to make your food digestible. And if your food is not digestible, you will not be able to get your nutrients to the point, even if you get the food. If you're not taking care of your dentition correctly, you're not able to get your food to the point where you can eat it. And all you have to do is look at the way some people eat one time. They'll bite something and they don't chew it. And if you don't chew the stuff, when it gets into your stomach, it's not at a point where it can be digested because it's in one big piece. And in order for it to be made digestible, it has to be in smaller pieces. You gotta chew it. So that your teeth, you've gotta have teeth that are in good repair. Now, they don't have to be really, really cool, beautiful teeth. They don't have to have gold diamonds and stuff like that in them. But that's one of the things, if that's what you want, or as your saying goes, if it floats your boat, do that. But that's not something you need, that's something you want. So we're done with that. Now, what else do you need? When you look at you need good neighbors. You need a good family. I must have the most wonderful family in the whole world. Because I tell my daughter-in-law all the time, they will never be able to say that I was not fed properly. Of course, all you gotta do is look at me and see that I am well fed. As a matter of fact, you might say I am fed too much. But there again, that's something on which you can work. You don't have to be overfed. You just get to the point where you'll say, hold, enough. I've had enough for today. And if it's too much, wrap it and put it in the refrigerator and save it for later. Save it for later in the day for another meal, or save it for tomorrow for another meal. And therein lies another tale. And again, it takes me back to Miss Laura. Miss Laura, that's what they call my mother, Miss Laura. And Miss Laura always had enough to share with everybody, even with all the kids that she had. I told you how many kids we had today. I'm the 14th of 15. And never went to bed hungry. Never went to bed cold. And I always had enough to share with somebody else. Now, admittedly, I did not share. I have only gotten to that point since I am older. But when I was a little kid, I was not very sharing. As a matter of fact, a lot of times I would wait until my brothers were done with all of their good stuff. And then I would take mine out. And of course, at the time, they had, I hadn't gotten to the point where I was the one. I always wanted to be a sweet little girl. And as the old people used to say when I was a little kid, commence to find out. That means you eventually found out. I was not a sweet little girl. I really had a tendency to be kind of mean. And it was because the only thing I can say is that my brothers made me that way. And they told me that this was the way that things were done. And because my brothers said it, they were the only people who could tell me was my parents and my brothers. Of course, my sisters were older, so that I never really knew my sisters until I was an adult, because they were married and had children. But one day, I don't know, one of the things they used to tease me and tell me that I was a broken boy because I was so destructive. And, and every time I would walk into a room, when I was teaching school, I was taught about inertia and things moving all the time. And if you notice that when you're dusting furniture, cleaning the bathtub, cleaning the dishes, things little by little move to the edge. And it was just my luck that all of whatever it was had moved to the edge, and it would fall and break just as I walked into the room. And of course, because my brothers told me I was destructive, I believed them. Even my dad, Papa, used to say that I was destructive. He would say I would tear hell off the hinges and go back for the screws. And it took me a long time to find out that that wasn't true. That even though Papa said that hell wasn't on hinges. That, and hell was everywhere. And but that wasn't nice to say. But one of the things I learned as I grew older, I learned, as my brother said, I would fix anything, I would arrange anything in my mind so that it worked for me. And that was what I did. Anything that needed to be worked out for me to be a sweet little girl, I did. And back to things breaking, my brothers told me that I was a broken boy because I had broken off how I reread. And my sister came home and I was in tears. And she says, well, what's the matter? And I told her what my brother said. And since nobody could tell me anything except Mama or my brothers, and she says, oh, baby, you're a girl, and that's the way girls are. And sweet little Laura couldn't wait for her brothers to come home, or one of her brothers to come home and reveal to him, guess what happened today? I found out that I am not a broken boy. But Miriam told me that I was a girl and that all girls are like that. And the tears dried up immediately. And I couldn't wait for one of my brothers to come in and start messing with me. And what I did was reveal to him, guess what I found out today? I am not a broken boy. I am a girl, and girls are like that. But guess what I found out? I found out how to break yours. And well, how did that story begin? It made, right away, I wasn't a sweet little girl that I wanted to be. But all of a sudden, I was in charge. And you find out that all of the ugly things that happen now, it happens because somebody wants to be fill in the blank. And the one thing that I had, for which I could be really thankful, was a mother who worked on me to be, I didn't get to be a sweet little girl, but I think eventually I may be a sweet little old lady. And I think about the little old lady in Pasadena. Remember that song about the sweet little old lady in Pasadena? Well, I am now trying to be the sweet little old lady in Mansfield. And as I walk down the street now in my wheelchair, which is the most wonderful thing in the world, I've several kids in the neighborhood They all call me Gigi, and that's because my great-grandchildren call me Gigi, great-grandmother. And you find out that little kids little kids can really make you feel so good. One of my great-grandchildren said to me one day, when I asked or said to her, I said whatever it was, "Did you hear me?" And at the time in school, they must have been learning about paying attention and listening and hearing and the advantages and disadvantages. And it was evident that she wasn't listening, or she didn't hear me. I won't say she. And I said, "Mina, I said something," and she said, without skipping a beat, "Gigi, I heard you, but I'm not listening." And therein lies the tale, that unless you set the pace so that someone will listen, you may as well be talking to the wall, because if they're not listening, it's not heard. And same grandchildren, great-grandchildren. One day was coming home and said, "You know, I'm going to do A, B, and C, whatever." And I said, "But how are you going to do that?" She says, "Well, I'm going to put this here and that there." And she said, so I said, "But how are you going to do it?" She says, "Well, I'm going to ask my mother and my father, and if I can do this, that, or the other." And you right away saw that there was a frame of reference in which these youngsters are allowed to work. And you realize that that's really all we need to have, is you make a frame of reference in which someone can do something. You don't have to have all the money in the world. Doesn't have to be a lot of stuff under the bed for you to do it. You have to have people working together in order to do it. And all you got to do is look out your window. I don't know if you're able to see that it's really a beautiful day in the neighborhood. But it is. And you are able to see that someplace, somewhere, someone is doing the right thing so that everyone benefits by this wonderful atmosphere, this wonderful city, this wonderful state, this wonderful country in which we live. And irrespective of the fact that there are so many people trying so hard to make things bad for everyone, you find out that there is a God above who loves everybody, who is trying so hard to make this country all that that lady in the harbor asked for. You're tired, you're poor, you're hungry, huddled masses longing to be free. And there are so many people like that. But so many of us have the advantage to be with them, to share with them, and to make it known to them that this is our country. God bless America. God bless you.